The Galactic Assembly. The Grand Assembly Hall was abuzz with activity as dignitaries from across the galaxy gathered for the centennial showcase of military might. Sleek ships bearing the crests of 100 worlds descended upon the host planet, each carrying a delegation eager to display their civilization's destructive potential. Amidst the grandeur and the alien finery, the human representatives seemed almost drab. Their unadorned uniforms and plain features stood in stark contrast to the shimmering scales, glowing auras, and intricate exoskeletons of the other attendees. As the newest members of the galactic community, they were here to observe, to learn, and perhaps to forge alliances. The assembly began with all the pomp and circumstance one would expect from such an august gathering. Hovering platforms carried each delegation to the central stage, where they presented their latest and deadliest arms. The Zorgans unveiled a fleet of autonomous hunter-killers, each equipped with a singularity cannon capable of imploding a small moon. The Quicks demonstrated a swarm of nanobots that could disassemble matter at the atomic level. Even the normally peaceful Eldari revealed a psionic amplifier that could turn a single thought into a planet-scouring wave of destruction. Through it all, the human delegation remained silent and stoic, taking copious notes on their anachronistic paper pads. Then it was their turn. Admiral Catherine Ivanova stepped up to the podium, the eyes of 1,000 alien species upon her. She began to speak, her voice steady and clear. People of the galaxy, I thank you for this opportunity to share in the bounty of your wisdom and your might. We humans are a young race, and we still have much to learn. But we too have a proud warrior tradition, stretching back to the dawn of our civilization. She paused, and the anticipatory murmurs of the crowd ceased. In that pregnant silence, she made a small gesture. Servants stepped forward bearing trays covered in red velvet. With a flourish, Ivanova whipped off the cloth. Behold, she said, the pinnacle of human weapons technology. The assembly hall erupted in a cacophony of clicks, whirs, and trills, the alien equivalent of uproarious laughter. For on the trays were arranged a collection of items that most species hadn't used in warfare for eons. Chemically propelled kinetic rifles, explosive frag grenades, even a few swords and knives. The insectoid warrior flexed his mandibles in what might have been a sneer. You jest, surely. These are relics, fit only for a museum. No jest, Ivanova replied calmly. These weapons have served humanity well for centuries. Their simplicity is their strength. The luminous being pulsed with color, its amusement clear. Strength. I could destroy 100 of your warriors before they could even aim those primitive things. Ivanova smiled, and there was a coldness in it that gave the aliens pause. You could try. She let that hang in the air for a long moment, then stepped down from the stage. The human delegation followed her out, leaving a hall filled with bemused and dismissive chatter in their wake. But in a shadowed alcove, a cloaked figure watched the humans depart with keen interest. Primitive, perhaps, it mused to itself, but sometimes the old ways are best. We shall see what these humans are made of. Tensions resumed the halls of power. Whispers turned to worried debates. Some dismissed humanity's successes as mere luck, or the folly of foes who had underestimated them. Others pointed to the humans' aggressive expansion and argued that they were becoming a disruptive influence in galactic affairs. A few even suggested that humanity's primitive ways were an affront to the civilized values of the galactic community. Matters came to a head when a human flotilla, responding to a distress call, clashed with a Zorgan battle group on the edge of their territory. The Zorgans, long considered to have the most powerful military in the galaxy, expected an easy victory. In the weeks following the assembly, reports began to filter in from the fringes of civilized space. Human ships, armed with nothing but their antiquated projectile weapons, were venturing into sectors that even the most advanced species shunned, and they were thriving. Pirate fleets that had terrorized the space lanes for decades were being torn apart, their sleek ships shattered by barrages of simple kinetic rounds. Monsters that had defied even the most exotic energies were being brought down by hails of lead and steel. And in the darkest corners of the galaxy, human marines were engaging in pitched battles with horrors that would make even the stoutest warriors quail. At first, the galactic community dismissed these accounts as exaggerations or outright fabrications. The idea that primitive human weapons could pose a threat was laughable. But as more and more reports flooded in, a sense of unease began to grow. In the halls of power, whispers turned to worried debates. Some dismissed humanity's successes as mere luck, or the folly of foes who had underestimated them. Others pointed to the humans' aggressive expansion and argued that they were becoming a disruptive influence in galactic affairs. A few even suggested that humanity's primitive ways were an affront to the civilized values of the galactic community. Matters came to a head when a human flotilla, responding to a distress call, clashed with a Zorgan battle group on the edge of their territory. The Zorgans, long considered to have the most powerful military in the galaxy, expected an easy victory. But to their shock and dismay, the human ships not only stood their ground but dealt a devastating blow. Zorgan vessels, their hulls ruptured by armor-piercing rounds, were left drifting and lifeless. The prideful warriors, their exoskeletons shattered by explosive shells, were cast into the void. The Zorgan High Command was furious. They denounced humanity as savages and demanded that the Galactic Council take action to curb their aggression. Other species, seeing an opportunity to diminish a potential rival, quickly added their voices to the chorus of condemnation. In an emergency session of the Council, the human ambassador was called to account for his species' actions. "You stand accused of unprovoked aggression and of flouting the norms of civilized warfare," the presiding counselor intoned. "How do you plead?" The ambassador, a grizzled veteran named Marcus Gray, stood firm in the face of the assembled dignitaries' displeasure. "We plead guilty to defending the innocent against those who would prey upon them. We plead guilty to refusing to back down in the face of threats and bullying. And we plead guilty to using the tools of war that have served us best, regardless of their perceived status or sophistication." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But most of all, we plead guilty to being human, and that is something we will never apologize for." With that, he strode from the chamber, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. But as the council erupted into frenzied debate, one question hung heavy in the air. What were they going to do about the human problem? The challenge. On a desolate planetoid on the edge of neutral space, a challenge was issued and accepted. The Zorgans, smarting from their defeat and eager to reassert their dominance, had called for a contest of arms. Each species would send their best warriors, equipped with their deadliest weapons, to engage in a battle royal. The last one standing would win glory for their people and a seat on the Galactic Council. Most assumed it would be a formality. The Zorgans, with their advanced technology and genetically engineered super soldiers, were the clear favorites. The other contenders, while formidable, were seen as little more than fodder for the Zorgan war machine. And the humans, they were barely an afterthought. The idea that they could stand against the might of the galaxy's greatest warriors with their crude weapons was laughable. As the various delegations arrived on the planetoid, the contrast could not have been starker. The Zorgans disembarked from their ships in a blaze of pomp and circumstance, their gleaming exoskeletons adorned with trophies from 100 campaigns. The Quicks came as a chittering swarm, their collective mind focused on a single goal. The Eldari glided serenely, their ancient eyes betraying no hint of fear or doubt. And the humans, they came in battered transports, their armor scared and their faces grim. They carried their weapons with the ease of long familiarity, but there was no pride or boastfulness in their demeanor. They were here to do a job, nothing more. As the designated battlefield, a jagged canyon laced with force fields to prevent escape or outside interference, the warriors took their positions. The Zorgans arrayed themselves in a phalanx, their particle lances glowing with barely restrained power. The Quicks spread out in a skirmish line, ready to engulf their foes in a tide of chitin and acid. The Eldari took to the heights, their psionic energies crackling in the air around them. The humans, outnumbered and outgunned, simply dug in. They piled up rocks for cover, laid out fields of fire, and checked their weapons one last time. To the other warriors, it seemed a pathetic gesture, a futile attempt to stave off the inevitable. Then the signal was given, and the battle began. What followed was a maelstrom of fire and blood, a primal contest of wills as much as weapons. The Zorkans marched forward implacably, their lances scything through rock and flesh alike. The Quicks swarmed over the battlefield, seeking to overwhelm their foes with sheer numbers. The Eldari rained down destruction from above, their minds turned to destructive purpose. And the humans? They fought with a ferocity and a skill that stunned their foes. Their rifles barked and their grenades thundered, every shot placed with lethal precision. They moved with a fluid coordination, covering each other and adapting to the shifting tides of battle with uncanny speed. And when the fighting turned close and desperate, they met fang and claw with bayonet and blade, giving no quarter and asking none. In the end, when the dust settled and the screams faded, only one force remained standing amidst the carnage. Battered, bloodied, but unbroken, the human warriors gathered their wounded and their dead. They had not just survived, but triumphed against the greatest odds the galaxy could muster. And as the news of their victory spread, a shockwave of disbelief and awe rippled across the stars. For the first time, the galaxy was forced to confront the true potential of humanity's primitive ways of war. And in the halls of power, a new question echoed. What happens when the humans decide to stop playing by the rules? Revelation. In the aftermath of humanity's stunning victory, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The topic of discussion: the secret behind the humans' inexplicable triumph. How had a species so technologically inferior managed to overcome the most advanced warriors in the known universe? Theories abounded. Some suggested that the humans had secretly developed advanced technologies and had been hiding their true capabilities. Others whispered of genetic enhancements or forbidden psionic arts. A few even hinted at divine intervention or the favor of the ancient gods. As the debate raged, a small group of researchers, drawn from the wisest and most learned of a dozen species, delved into the mystery. They pored over sensor logs and battle recordings, analyzed human physiology and psychology, and even interviewed the survivors of the battle, both human and alien. What they discovered astonished them. The humans had not triumphed through superior technology or arcane powers. In fact, their weapons were just as primitive as they appeared: chemically propelled projectiles, high explosives, and simple melee tools. No, the secret to their success lay elsewhere. It lay in their tactics, honed over centuries of constant warfare on their home planet. In their ability to adapt and improvise in the face of any challenge. In their indomitable will and their refusal to accept defeat even in the face of overwhelming odds. But most of all, it lay in their warrior culture. For the humans, war was not just a tool of politics or a means to an end. It was a way of life, a crucible that forged them into something more than the sum of their parts. Every human soldier, from the greenest recruit to the most grizzled veteran, was a product of this culture, steeped in its traditions and its unyielding ethos. This revelation sent shockwaves through the galactic community. For eons, the prevailing wisdom had been that the path to military supremacy lay in ever more advanced technology, in weapons that could shatter planets and bend space-time to their will. But the humans had shown another way, a way of skill and spirit, of courage and resolve. Some species reacted with fear and revulsion, seeing in humanity's ways a barbarism that threatened the very foundations of galactic civilization. They called for sanctions, for quarantine, even for preemptive strikes to curb the human menace. But others saw opportunity. They looked upon the humans with new eyes, seeing not savages but potential allies, or potential conquerors. For if humanity's primitive ways could triumph over the Zorgans, what could they do if they were given access to the galaxy's most advanced technologies? In the end, it was this question that would shape the course of galactic history. For as the humans took their place on the Galactic Council, their influence began to spread. Some species sought to emulate their ways, integrating human tactics and training into their own militaries. Others sought to ally with them, hoping to harness their martial prowess for their own ends. And a few, the wisest and the most far-seeing, began to ponder a different question. If humanity could achieve so much with so little, what would they be capable of if they were allowed to reach their full potential? What kind of galaxy would that be? And what role would the other species play in it? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same. For better or for worse, the age of humanity had begun. A shift in power. In the years that followed humanity's ascension to the galactic stage, a new order began to take shape. It was an order forged in the heat of battle and tempered by the cold realities of power politics. And at its heart were the humans, no longer the upstarts or the primitives, but a force to be reckoned with in their own right. On 1,000 worlds, human soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder with their alien allies, their once derided weapons now viewed with a mix of respect and fear. In the corridors of power, human diplomats and strategists rubbed elbows with the great and the mighty, their insights and their instincts shaping the course of galactic affairs. But it was in the realm of technology that humanity's influence was perhaps most profound. For as the secrets of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations were open to them, the humans did what they had always done. They adapted, they innovated, and they made those technologies their own. In human hands, the particle lances of the Zorgans became even more deadly, their beams honed to a microscopic edge. The nanites of the Quicks were repurposed, turned into healing swarms and construction crews. And the psionic powers of the Eldari found new expression, intertwined with human ingenuity to create marvels and wonders undreamed of. Yet even as humanity rose, there were those who looked upon their ascent with trepidation. For the humans, for all their achievements, remained an unpredictable force, driven by passions and imperatives that were often inscrutable to the other species of the galaxy. Some feared that humanity would become the new Zorgans, using their growing might to dominate and subjugate. Others worried that they would trigger a new arms race, as other species scrambled to match their newfound powers. And a few, the most cynical and the most jaded, wondered if the humans had planned it all from the beginning, if their primitive facade had been nothing more than a ruse, a way to lull the galaxy into complacency before striking. But if the humans harbored such ambitions, they kept them well hidden. For in public, they remained the steadfast allies and the honorable warriors they had always been. They spoke of cooperation and coexistence, of a galaxy where all species could thrive and prosper. And yet there was a new steel in their words, a quiet confidence that had not been there before. For they knew, as did all who looked upon them with clear eyes, that the balance of power had shifted. The galaxy had entered a new age, an age where the old certainties no longer applied. In this brave new era, it would be the humans who would chart the course, for good or for ill. And all the other species, from the mightiest to the meekest, would have to find their place in a universe reshaped by humanity's will and humanity's vision. Some would resist, seeking to cling to the old ways or to challenge humanity's dominance. Others would embrace the change, seeing in the humans a chance for a new beginning, a fresh start free from the baggage of the past. But one thing was certain: there would be no going back. The galaxy had been forever changed by the rise of the once primitive humans, and whatever the future held, it would be a future defined by the choices they made and the paths they trod. For in the end, it was not the weapons that made the warrior, but the heart and the spirit that wielded them. And in the hearts and spirits of humanity, the galaxy would find its destiny, for better or for worse.